Now you notice here, each of the dashboards here in red is users by group, down below is license usage by type, on the right is user by site. These are just examples. What I want to point out in the dashboards is that for every dashboard that is configured, you can have several different views. Here I have a bar dashboard, and you'll notice as I hover over each portion of the dashboard or bar, it's going to give you my total and some information about what we're seeing here. Now, since this is users by group, it's showing it by recorded, by staff. You've got Nick, KP, consulting, recorded, etc. So this is just my point in showing this to you is that there's lots of information to look at, and you'll need to hover over some of the dashboard items to see them. But you'll also notice at the end of each bar is the total number at the end. This is helpful because a lot of times, especially in contact center, you don't have a luxury of being able to go to a dashboard and hover over it. So it really isn't helpful if you have to actually manipulate it manually. This is a better view because I can see right away that recorded calls, presuming that's what this is like 65, staff is 28, etc. So you have the option how you want to display information. Now you can see down below in the bar graph below, license usage by type. The more information you put on one of these, what I'll call dashlets, the smaller the text becomes. So you have to think about what information you're trying to present, and it becomes very easily readable, or at least you'll know right away when you have too much information. So sometimes you have to manipulate your tiles. Right now we have 2 tiles next to 2 tiles. You can go 3 tiles next to 2 tiles. You can mix and match. My point here is that sometimes you have to conserve space so that you can get the best viewing capability, and every user can create their sort of own setup. What you'll notice about each of these dashboards is in the upper right-hand corner, there's a magnifying glass, and there's also a drop-down menu here. The drop-down menu lets you print this chart. A lot of times when someone is trying to capture data, they'll print the chart immediately because they want to send it somewhere, or they'll download it as a different file type, so a PNG file, JPEG, PDF, or a vector image. This is just there for luxury purposes. You actually don't need to do a lot of printing because the system is set up so you can automate all of this as well. So just know that the menu option is there should you need to look at different ways of output. Now, probably the most important piece is in the upper right-hand corner is a magnifying glass. The magnifying glass serves one purpose. Most people, they like a visual representation of data, but sometimes you want to go a little deeper. When you use the Hourglass, the first thing you'll notice is that it's going to take us into a different view. At the top, and this is pretty similar with everything in BrightMetrics, when you use a link to view more details, it is not going to overwrite the page you're on. It's going to pop a new tab in your browser so that you can dig deeper without losing your way. So it's sort of like breadcrumbs. It kind of takes you the pathway. Now, let me move this out of the way down at the bottom. Now at the top here, we see the same information we saw a moment ago. So we saw recorded, staff, Nick, etc. But we also see down below that, you see a matrix of information here. There are something called dimensions. Don't worry about that now. I'm going to simplify this. Sometimes the usage and the naming conventions can be more confusing than they're worth. But what we're going to relate this to is rows and columns to make it simple. Now, what you'll notice first about the graph at the top is that you have on the left-hand side, you have a drop-down window, which gives you date ranges. The system is very good about putting relative values. So instead of the client or instead of the user having to put in a specific date, they can say, well, show me the data today. Show me everything this week to date. Show me this week, Monday through Friday. Show me yesterday. Show me last week. So a lot of really good effort has gone into compartmentalizing the information, I think probably to consolidate your effort so you can do a single click to get your information. So there, in most cases, anytime you're looking for a date range, there is always a drop down from you to pick from. And you can see the advantage here, last quarter, quarter to date, if you're sales minded, all sorts of things that are really good. So just know that. Now on the right-hand side, various ways that you can view data. The way you can tell what data you're looking at, or at least what format you're looking at, is what is orange. So right now we have horizontal, which these lines are going horizontally at the top, and you have a bar chart. That's what we're seeing. If I want to see something different, let's start on the very far right. I can go to, move that down, I can go to pie chart and watch what happens at the top. Now I have a pie chart. Now I'm not a fan of pie charts because it consolidates the data into a smaller view. Some people are. This is just about option. Going to the right again, if I want a different view, I hit bar chart. Now I have a bar chart. If I want a time series, which is hourly, you can see that normally what you'd see here is an up and down effort here. Maybe this one will do it for us. Okay, we're gonna find one that does, but the point in my showing this to you on the right-hand side is that you can show these in various views. There's the pie chart, bar chart, and the best way that you can tell where you're at is which items are orange. Now I'll add one more thing. You'll notice with the pie chart, there's just simply the values, and here's the show value button I was talking about. If I turn off the show value, now you don't see any information, you just see it pretty vague, and you have to hover. This is what I mean by the user can hover and get information. I'm not a fan of that. So showing values is much better because it'll show it in real time for me in percentages as call out items, which is much easier to view at a glance. And I think in the context of operations, anytime you can see information at a glance is better. But my point here is that each of these options may have additional options right here to the left. Watch what happens when I hit the bar chart. When I hit bar chart, now I have this stacked, show value, horizontal, vertical. You can pick your flavor. There's vertical. I'm not a fan of vertical because it forces me to look at a broader view. I like horizontal, or I can do stacked. Stacked, I'm not a fan of either. I prefer just to do the horizontal, just like this. Any questions about the visibility on the chart above? Okay, now there's two more things I want to show you here. Right in the middle, and it's very faint. See on the left-hand side where it says March 27, and you have your calendar right here? All the way to the right, you have the same thing. This is actually showing a space in time, and we took this information from a dashboard. Now, I can alter that by simply saying, well, let's change the time here by dragging this dragger that way, and it'll recalculate information. And you can see my numbers below also recalculate. What this allows me to do is to, instead of just looking at the basic time frame, I'm presuming this dashboard is probably showing today, it allows me in a hurry just to immediately add information. So again here, if you're looking at the left-hand side, there's a calendaring option here on the right-hand side, or you can just drag the bar in and out. And when you drag it out, watch what happens to that, the data on the left-hand side. Our chart built out here. So now we have 86 user count. These are recorded. So hopefully you're seeing the relationship here. What's great about this is that clients can in real time say, well, that's the range that I show on my dashboard, but I need to see more information. So how you use this is really up to you. I tend to just keep it simple and just know that's another view. Now let's talk about the data down below. For every chart is driven by the data, and the data is pretty much in a column setting, which people are pretty familiar with Excel. It's sort of the same process. And you'll notice as I go into each piece here, everything is like a hyperlink. You see how everything turns into a hyperlink? If I want to look at the KP Consulting recorded, when I selected it, what happened is it opened a new tab, and you'll notice I can go back at the top to each tab and point a reference. This is really good because the user doesn't lose their way. So this helps you keep track of where you're at. Now what I did is I went into Consulting Recorded, and it popped open a new window for a print preview. Now this is where we're going to start having a little bit more fun with the data. All of these headers, you notice how they're hyperlinks as I navigate across? This allows me to sort. Now this doesn't have a lot of calls. We're going to get into that in just a bit, but if I wanted to sort this one, let's do it by extension, for example, we have 237998992. If I were to sort, it allows me to sort. Now you can see a flipped order. So this is a great way for clients or for you to find information. So basically this here is your column breakout. All of the links will pop open a new window. And then let's take a look at the detail inside these calls here. What I want to do is go into, this one's not going to let me see it. It's a restriction control. Okay, we'll leave it at that for now. You'll notice when you look at a detail like this at the top, you have the ability to print, save as an on-demand report, and we're going to talk about this in a minute. You can also export this to Excel, PDF, or CSV. So the tool is really handy because as I'm a user, if I'm looking at my dashboard and see a problem, I can select the details of this and then go right into finding exactly which, let's look at Nick here. So I can look at the details there and see exactly what's happening, and each window will take you to the next progressive piece so that I'm always able to dig down. And this is what I consider the holy grail of any user, because most products require you to run multiple reports. And for the user, and you guys are all users, you know that running multiple reports takes lots of time. With the BrightMetrics tool, I can simply go drill down from one report. So it makes it really nimble and easy. So now that we have sort of an overview of dashboards, let's go into edit our dashboards here on the left-hand side. It's the fourth option down. So depending on your permissions, you may or may not have access to edit this. So it's going to be dependent upon how you're set up and what type of user you are. So here are my dashboards, and a couple of things are shown to us once we're in the editing panel. You have a create chart, you have an edit tab here on the left, delete tab, email tab, duplicate tab, and tab permissions. Now there's a couple of different things here on the dashboard. Remember in the upper right-hand corner, we had the hourglass. Now we don't, but we have something better. Down below each dashboard on the right-hand side is a drop-down arrow or triangle. You see that? When I pop that open, it's going to allow me to move this dashboard to another tab, copy it to another tab, or remove it. But the most important piece is the chart options here. When I select chart options open, you're going to get a pop-up window in the center. And at the very top here, you can take any sort of built-in reporting mechanism for a dashboard, give it any name you want. So it's very common for users to say, okay, this is my ops group, this is my technical support team, etc. And they can also provide different colors. Now remember, we also have the chart type. We were largely looking at bar chart. You can do a pie chart, time series, etc. And the only difference with this is that it's a drop down. So now you can do horizontal or vertical, show the value beside the bar or not, and then the chart order can be default. But for some users, they want to sort in a different order, either largest to smallest, smallest to largest, or alphabetically. So it's very easy. The chart options give you full flexibility, and probably one of the best ones is the time range. Again, these are the relative values. So I might have full available time range, which I don't recommend. Full available time range is going to be from the time the system's in or just for the full range that's available, current year to date. So some of these things I kind of would recommend you not pulling from the beginning of time. It's a resource intensive product. So just kind of think of it in that way, but it's very liberal in terms of you can also specify specific days. For some customers, they want to look at just the last 3 days trending or the last 4 days or the last 9 days. And a lot of that is dependent on how the customer views their work week, but you've got a lot of ways to slice the data. Now down below, you can tell what's we're viewing because it's basic is orange. Now, when you look at chart values, there's lots of ways to look at information. Now, I have a chart value, it's user count. Do you see this little plus sign next to it? I may want to add additional pieces. I want the user count plus something else. Now, I'm going to show it to you in a couple of different ways. And there's also categories. So when you're trying to break things out specifically, now this is really PBX facing. When we get into Contact Center, you're going to see a little bit different. But I'm just showing you there's lots of options. You can basically take a piece of data, slice it out, categorize it, break it down into lots of little pieces that are really good for the end user. And then you can also have subcategories, because sometimes you want to split the one category down into micro segments, especially if you have an operations group. Let's say, for example, Jody's umbrella is pretty broad. She has a support desk, she has PMs, etc. We may want to take the total activity for Jody's management group, break it down by her individual subcategories, etc. So this gives you a real explicit view. This prevents the user from having to create 5 different views. I can have one that just drills the data down further and further. Now you'll notice these filters. But next to each filter, there's a plus sign or not. When you open the plus sign, you have options. Here's where it becomes interesting. Oftentimes when you configure a system, you might just have a work group. But in that work group, you want to have a different classifications. You could hand select, well, only show me activity for the operator from the same metric. My point in showing this to you is that when you use the term user, user is global. But an operator is different than support desk. This allows you to break those down into segments. And so for each of these types, if you're interested in finding out what is available to you, just select the plus sign and you'll get the information above. Now you can also select down below all, none, or items starting with. So maybe you have operations as ops dash front lines, ops dash tier 2, ops dash tier 3. So it's very flexible in terms of what you're trying to accomplish. So I'll add a couple more things. What I'm a big fan of in terms of creating tabs, each of these at the top is a tab. A chart is one of these tiles below. So depending on what you're trying to accomplish, you're going to either use one of these. Now, I don't recommend building tabs from scratch unless you absolutely have to. So when you're initially setting it up, you may build from scratch, but as you start to progress further, I'm a big fan of duplicating the tab, because if I duplicate a tab, my new tab, all the information comes with it, and then I can just adjust what I need to adjust. And you notice at the top, my tab is at the end here, and we're not going to save that. That's one way to create a tab. Again, duplicating brings everything along for the ride. I like to do that because it helps me get to supervisor 1, 2, 3, and 4 much quicker than before. Now, one of the things that you can do with the tab permissions is going to be really important. So right here at the top is the tab permissions. When I go into permissions, it's very easy to read. You can see here the names of the individuals, what the permissions are. What I typically will do is set the users up and then give them administration capabilities depending on what we're trying to offer to them. So each user can have different permissions, whether it's view or modify or admin, which means they can do everything. So just know that the permissions are there. I'm going to cancel this because I don't want to change any of that. You can also email the tabs. At the top here is an email button. When I hit the email, right now I can send it now, or I can create a new schedule. When I create a new schedule, and this is the same with all scheduling, I just give it the email address. I have a typo there, and then each user is on a separate line at Inflow, etc. Now, the subject can be custom or not. It depends. What I mean by that, if you're going to send a tab called users by group, you could say, okay, this is your weekly users by group. It's just completely flexible. One of the things I like to do as well is in the body of the message, especially if we're automating something, your daily real time is ready, or whatever details. And then down below, you can pick your time range, you can pick your time zone, and how often you want it. If you want it every day, it'll go every day. If you want days of the week, you'll notice there's green arrows here. You just pick which items you want to send it. And then from here, you'll either save or send now. So that's a quick hit on basic editing. All right, let's get into reporting, on-demand reports. So when you first log in and you look at on-demand reports, you're going to have ShoreTel and you're going to have ShoreTel ECC. Now, these are all the reports from ShoreTel. I will tell you there's a lot more than what ShoreTel provides. For example, on the PBX side, if you're looking for workgroup reports, there's basically 4 reports. However, you can see there's a lot more going on here. On ECC, it's even more interesting. So ECC will show all the activity, and it will show the agent reports, the group reports. What is missing on the ECC side is something more specific, like DNIS reports or IVR reporting, those types of details. So here's how I break it out. When we install a system, it's recommended that all users use the BrightMetrics tool. The only time you're going to really lean on ECC reporting is if you have a need to look at IVR detail and or there's a custom formula you want to create. Now in Contact Center, 2 of those formulas are agent availability and occupancy. However, almost everything you are going to need, I'm going to say at least 99.5% will be in BrightMetrics. And if you are using BrightMetrics or ECC, please do not use ECC. Use BrightMetrics. There's going to be some data dissimilarities, and I can explain them away, but you will be confused. The best thing is to just use BrightMetrics. Now, in the BrightMetrics report, let's just go right to what most people ask. I want to run a performance report by date. Now, here's what happens when you select a report. These reports here, RG, R stands for report, G stands for group, RA is agent, etc. These are the same reports that map directly to your version of ECC. And you'll notice your time range selection is here. So I can do a relative value. Remember, just a moment ago, I was showing you how you can do year to date, month to date, week to date. So relative value. Here I've got last blank days. So a lot of times you want just the last 3 days or the last 14 days. So it's pretty flexible. Just remember, relative lets you use what's already canned and built in, and then you can certainly augment it based on your specific needs using the last days. Now you could also do a range. A range will actually bring you traditional calendaring, so I can say, well, let's do 27th through this week, and we're good. Okay, so you have lots of options, or I can do all. I do not recommend using all. It's labor intensive, and even though it's offloaded onto a separate server, it will probably bring back much more data than it's able to present visually. In other words, it's going to clip the data and send it to you in segments, and that sometimes is more frustrating. So in all cases, you can look for a range or use one of the relative values. And you'll notice there's a checkbox for include today. Now the call date group hour. That simply means, do I want all hours, meaning from midnight to midnight or 11:59, or do I want to select just 1 hour? I want to see 8 a.m. I want to see 10. Do I want multiple hours? And you'll notice when I hit multiple, right below comes up a click to select values because I can build my values. Well, I only want to see my morning shift 8, 9, 10, 11, and 12. Or if you're building it, and this really is customer specific. So if they have different shifts, it might be helpful to see it in different shifts. So here's 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 p.m. And then they might have an evening shift, which could be, I don't know, 8 p.m. till midnight, whatever the case is. So you can mix and match and create what you're looking for in the multiple values, or you can use a range. And the range is, well, give me 6 a.m. to, I don't know, 10 p.m. This just cuts out the 0 options. A lot of times you'll get a report that'll show the entire day, and it's really a waste of paper because you're really only interested in between 8 and 10. So select your options. In this case, I'm going to go ahead and select options. We're going to see some data here in a minute. 8, 9, 10. We're going to go for a full day here for us. I'll take this down to 8 p.m. Okay, so I'm going to hit apply. Now the next one is group name. You can do all groups. Most people don't like that. You can do individual groups. So these are our groups here on our system: demo group, escalations, support, etc. I can do multiple groups. Now the values popped open again, so I can say, well, show me these 2 groups. So let's look at these 2 because I know there will be data there, and we'll hit apply. You also have range. So if you wanted to do a range from these folks to these folks, it's just a handy tool, right? So let's go back to multiple. I'll pick I have escalation support, and then down below, I'm going to do preview report. Now you're going to see a lot of data. Don't be overwhelmed. You will be at first. Let's see what happens. Actually, you know what? I forgot to pick my date range. Let's do yesterday. Starting over. Okay. All right. So there is my from yesterday. So down below, let me move some of these options out of the way. And it is scrolling because I ran that first one, so it'll probably come up in just a moment with another option. But my point here is I picked yesterday, I picked the hour range, and I picked these 2 groups. Now down below, you're seeing a lot of information. Now, what you see is the date from yesterday, and then you see the fields across the top, columns versus rows, across those columns and rows. And then you'll probably see a lot of data here that may or may not be relevant to you, but you can mix and match and really look at information. Let's go into the details here. Since we're looking just at one day, you can notice here on the left-hand side that the date turns into a hyperlink. When I hit that link, it's going to pop open a new tab, and then it's going to show me the details. Now you're going to be able to start to see some of the activity that I mentioned earlier. All these headers at the top, they're hyperlinks. I can sort by any header. And you can start to see some of the sorting starts taking place when I hit some of the links. In this case, let's go back to date and time. My point in showing that is it's sortable, so it's easier for you to find information. But there's an interesting thing here you'll notice. Every call now is a hyperlink. I can go into any detail. This is what customers like, because at any point in time, I can just say, well, let's see, look at this first call. Jason Pollock answered it. He answered it within the first STI. That just means he answered in the first service time interval. If you're not familiar with service time intervals, don't be worried about it. We're really just looking at the reporting details. Let's open this detail here. And now, because we're actually in a call, Another window is going to pop in the middle of the screen. This is true cradle-to-grave reporting. It's a great diagnostics tool for support, but for the average user who's trying to manage a contact center or a user group, it serves lots of purposes. Now, at the top in blue is the full length of the call. Each of these segments represent where the call landed while it's going through being handled. So we can see the call came in from this phone number. You can see that it originated, talk time was 22 seconds. Here's the call ID, lots of information that may or may not be helpful for you. But you can see the call came in, it was answered by the IRN, whose job is really just to send it to its destination, which was the service. Now the service had it for 6 seconds, so the ring time was it went right straight to ring time. There was no queue time, but hopefully you're seeing there's lots of detail here. No ring, there's a ring time, and then the next segment should be our, there's our ring time, there's the next segment, ring time, and then Jason got it, and he was on talking for 22 seconds. Wrap time is 20 seconds. So lots of detail. And my point in showing this to you is that the details here often are really critical to the client or to whoever the user is, because you're trying to trace something that's happening. And you'll notice here from this vantage point, you go right to export to PDF. So the tool is great because from one report, I was able to get to details, and then I was able to then look at the details. And if I wanted to see the specific detail because I had to show somebody, hey, a call was on hold too long, I can export it to PDF here. This is what clients like, the cradle to grave capability to see where that call went. And had this call been put on hold, you would see the hold time, all the things and the nitty gritty that people really want. Now let's go back to the report. All right, now we're gonna go to a little bit more details, and this is why this tool is so great. Let's go into edit mode. I've shown you how to select information at the top. I've shown you a preview report. Now let's go into edit mode. Edit mode looks scary. Let's just start there. You've got a lot of values and dimensions and rows and columns. I mean, there's just so much. Don't let it overwhelm you. The best way for you to figure out what you're seeing is simply look at the headers here. Across the top, you've got call count all, answered, abandoned, etc. These are what goes across the top. And if you notice right here in values, that's what's here. So you can add and subtract columns. Now let's say you're not really interested in the average queue time. Watch what happens when I start subtracting values. If I start yanking these out, pull all these out and just drag them back to their top, you notice the top box here says available values. If I yank them out and then rerun the preview, watch what happens to the data down below. Now it's much smaller. Yes, it's customizable, and oftentimes when you're trying to create a report, you're probably saying the basic information to maybe a CEO who just wants call counts and average talk time, but for the operations, they want something different. My point here is that even though the system will come in a canned way, you can absolutely split those out. So let's do this. I'm going to go back into group performance. I'm going to go for yesterday. I'm going to go for multiple. Hang on one second. I want to show you another way to sort data. And this is probably the best way to sort data because people often want to see information and then see it based on logical groups. Let's go multiple. Let's go back to escalations and support, apply, preview report. So I have my detail count, right? You know, in these groups, there's various people. Well, one of the things I might want to do is say, well, show me the same counts, but show them by individual user. Go to party name, drag this down to columns. You see it's right here in columns. Now watch what happens when I run this report again. Now I've got it broken down. Here's all of Bert's calls. If I scroll this way, there's Chris's calls. If I scroll this way, there's Damien's calls. Now this side view probably isn't the best. I could also sort it this way, put it in the rows and hit preview. Now it's down this way. So you can see it's extremely flexible. If I wanted to see the total number 27, which is great for me, but in a clip, I want to see, okay, Bert, Chris, Damien, etc. It allows the user to select it in logical breakouts that make sense. So now you're starting to see the value of the BrightMetrics. And you can subdivide information lots of different ways. A lot of times you don't want to see it by party name, so we'll put that back. You want to see it by a service name. So if that's what you're after, you're simply just going to grab your values and see how it's broken out. And here I've got, since it's all the one service, it really didn't show me. It gave me the service of support, but that was the end of it. I can also group them by queued. So the real value here is with the tools, you can mix and match, etc. If I wanted to add more columns, I can go to the top here on the right, or actually it's in the center of your screen available. If I wanted to show percentages, I simply drag the details that I want. So if I want percentage of last agents logged in, at least one agent available, and then now I have a column all the way onto the right-hand side. Now, I've made some changes to this report, right? My columns here is I went to queued or not queued. So let's take the queued out, put it back where it belongs. Let's rerun this, and you'll see it reassess. And then let's do party name again, just because it's easier to visualize that into rows, party name into rows. And now it's got my total calls that I want broken out by each individual user. Now, since I've modified this report, I can email it here, but I recommend is save as. So it's going to give you the default name. In this case, I might say Chris R. daily detail. How about daily agent calls? And then dash RG group. You don't have to keep the generic name that is already provided. I do, just because it makes it easier for me to keep track of what I'm doing. Once I hit OK, it automatically throws it into my saved reports. So it's Chris R report here. Now you'll notice since it's saved, it's going to show me my details here on the right. Now I have two little icons. I have a report sharing. So if I create this report, I might want to hit the sharing and then add users to share it too. So if I want to share this with Brad Dog, I can make him an admin user and hit add user. Now he can see that report. If I want to add not Jennifer, maybe Jonah, and I want Jonah to be just to modify, add user. So that's what the small icon is to the right here. Now next to that is a little clock. That's the scheduling. When you start the schedule, you have to create a new schedule. Let's call this, I will send this to myself every day. And maybe I'll send it to also Jody at inflowcommunications.com. I know that's not your email. I'm just kind of making this up. I can say do a custom header or not. Let's do Chris R. daily agent deets. And then, hey, your daily details are ready. Obviously having trouble typing, and here's my format: PDF, CSV, or Excel. Most people like Excel. If it's PDF, if I'm sending it to agents, I do PDF. And I pick my time, let's say every morning at 5 a.m. Pacific Standard Time, and let's do just days of the month. I only want to send it on the 15th and the 31st. Once I select that, I can say the time and date range. Whenever you're sending me a report, always show me details from yesterday, and then save. Now, once I save this, it's got my schedule. It's going to send it to Jody and myself. Pretty straightforward. All right, let's go back to the standard reports, just to show you some of the fun ones that people always ask me about. So agent activity detail is an awesome one. Let's do yesterday. Let's do a couple of agents because I don't want anyone to feel like they're being picked on. Just because you're at the top, I'll pick the two of you. Hopefully that's okay. Hit preview. And what's good about this report, it's going to show every step that the user walked through. So logged in at this time, logged into escalations, there was an outbound non-ACD, then they went into release, came back. So this sort of detail clients love because they can trace somebody's every move. So that detail does exist. So I like to show that one. If I just want to show the agent login, I can do similar things. Let's just do relative again. Let's do yesterday, one agent. Let's do multiple. Looks like there might be a little lag here. Let's do Recio, Chris, and Chelsea, just so you know I'm not just picking on anyone in particular. Let's do preview report. And this is going to be what you expect: login time, logout time, release time, etc. And then it gives you the totals. If I didn't want to see some of this information, remember you can go to edit mode, drag and drop information you don't want. If you do alter an original, please save as something else so that you can always use the defaults. Okay, so you can see hopefully that there's a lot of ease with BrightMetrics. Contact center users love it because they can slice and dice the data from one report, and I showed that to you. On the ShoreTel side, there's a lot of really good reports here. One of the reports that people always ask for is, can I search for call by caller ID? And there's a built-in report for that. They just simply put in their caller ID here, and then hit preview. Obviously select their date and time. That's probably the number one thing folks look for is caller ID reporting. So typically what I will do is ask you for all your reports. What reports do you need to see on a daily basis, and what frequency do you need, and what details you want? And so as customers give me their details, I'll set up their original reports for them. I've done as many as 86 reports for a customer, just because I know at the end of the day, they can continue doing what they need to do, which is their operations, by having the details, and then they'll come to me later when they have questions. And 9 times out of 10, by my sending them the reports automatically after I've done the training, they don't have to jump through all the hoops, and they're getting their data immediately.